question is quite a bit more difficult. I'm going to show you a couple of strategies what you can use. Right now, they only give us two terms in the arithmetic sequence, and unfortunately, neither of them are term 1. So the reason this is more difficult is because a lot of students go to their formula sheet, and on your formula sheet, they're like, I have this formula for arithmetic sequences. And if I want to write out the general term, I need to know what term 1 and D is. What's the problem? Is I don't know D, and I don't know term 1, and I don't know an additional term really to help me find that out. So I'm stuck, and a lot of students get like, oh, I don't know what to do. So what happens when we're in a place where we're stuck? We say, well, what do I know? I know term 4, so I don't know term 1, I don't know term 2, I don't know term 3, I know term 4 is minus 4. Then I don't know term 5, I don't know term 6, but I know term 7 is 23. So this one was term 4. This one is term 7. This question is saying, can you find out what's supposed to go into that space into term 1? Okay? So I'm going to show you two different methods that are out there that people use to solve this, okay? And in both of those methods, we're going to solve for D first. Method 1 I'm going to do in purple. Here we go, method 1. Method 1 says temporarily think of term 4 as term 1. So I'm going to make this term 1, then this would be term 2, term 3, this would be term 4. If you did that, you could use your formula. Because according to your formula, you would know term 4, so we could plug in term 4 and n is 4. And we would know what term 1 is, and then the only thing you didn't know is D. So for example, if Tn is equal to term 1 plus D times n minus 1, then term 4 is equal to term 1 plus D 4 minus 1. So we're like, hey, I can do stuff with n is 4, and then what do I know? I know that temporarily that term 4 is 23. Temporarily, term 1 is actually negative 4 plus D times 3. And then I've got an equation where the only thing I don't know is D. How would you do this? Well, we'd add 4 to both sides. So 27 equals 3 times D. Divide both sides by 3, and we get D is equal to 9. Now there's two ways you could actually find term 1. Okay? Method 1 is hey, I can just put things in. If D is equal to 9, well, plug these in orange because we figured them out. If D is equal to 9, does that make sense? You'd have to add 9 to negative 4, which would get you to 5. Add 9 to 5, which would get you to 14. Add 9 to 14, does it get you to 23? Huh. So this is kind of nice. By plugging those in, I can check. It seems like D equals 9 is absolutely right. But then if I wanted to work backwards, if D is 9, that means I'm adding 9 when I'm going forwards. Does it make sense? You would subtract 9 when you're going backwards. So if I subtracted 9 once, I would get minus 13. then minus 22, and finally minus 31. So I could say that the answer is term 1 has to be minus 31. This is one way to find a term. You could use your common difference and just fill in the spaces. When might we not want to do this? I could ask this same question, but instead of this being term 4 and term 7, I could have had term 400 and term 403. And then you would have been like, I don't want to go back by 9s 399 times. So what else could we do? Now that we found D, we could go back to our formula, Tn equals T1 plus D times n minus 1, and we want to find T1. And now we're using the actual sequence. So you could either use the n as 7 or n as 4, because that was given to us in the question. So I'm going to use n as 4. What was term 4? Term 4 was minus 4. So I have minus 4 equals, term 1 is what I want to find. I figured out my D was 9, and if I used n as 4, this will be 4 minus 1. Negative 4 equals term 1 plus 9 times 3, 27. Subtract the 27. So you see how I still use the formula, but now it's the actual regular formula. Whereas temporarily, I thought term 4 was term 1, so I could find D. And then I went back and said, well, now I can use the actual formula. And now that I know D, I can find term 1. And once we have term 1 and term D, it doesn't ask us this in this question, but we can write the actual general term is going to be negative 31 plus 9 and minus 1. Because we found term 1 and we found D, so we can actually write out the formula using our formula sheet. So this is method 1. Everybody good? I'm going to just scroll back up, and I'm going to do, split it here. I'm going to do method 2 in green. Right? So again, method 2, I'll just rewrite this. Method 2 starts the same way. We know term 4, we know term 7. But method 2 uses the idea like this, that if there's a common difference, I would have to add D once to get to this space. I would have to add D again to get to this space, and add D a third time to get to this space. And we can write an equation from this just using logic. No formulas involved from your formula sheet. The logic says this, that if we started at minus 4 and added D 3 times, where would we get? We would get to 23. So the nice thing about the logic method is that you're not like manipulating formulas and like doing a lot of extra thinking. You just made a logical statement. If I start at negative 4 and there's a common difference, that means if I add that D 3 times, I'm going to get to 23. Well, this is easy to solve for. 3D, add the 4 to the other side is 27. Divide, and you get D equals 9. Once you get D equals 9, We go to find term 1 just like we did in the last one. You can either use the formula or what we did in the orange, work your way backwards. So I'd like you to look right now at method 1 and method 2. Which one do you think your brain likes more? Do you like using formulas? So then you would like to say, I want to rearrange the formula and temporarily make this term 1, which would then make this up 3, term 4. And use a formula to solve for D. Or am I the type of person that just likes to use something logic? Use some logic saying, hey, if this common difference, how many times would I add D to go from one to the other? I would add D 3 times, so I could write an equation that says I could start with -4, add D 3 times and get 23, and solve for D that way. Once you've solved for D first, either with method 1 or method 2, then it goes to the same thing for finding term 1. You could either, I guess there's 2 methods, you could either work your way backwards or plug everything into the formula that you know. Formulas are powerful when there's only one thing you don't know. And you learned last semester if there's 2 things you don't know, as soon as you get 2 equations, then you have a systems of equations and you can solve that. Okay, so questions we can circle on this one are 10 and 13. So circle questions 10 and 13.